The operator's voice was cold, mechanical, and entirely unimpressed. 911, what is your emergency? On the other end of the line, the sound of ragged breathing and frantic footsteps. He's going to kill her. Please, you don't understand. I saw him drag her into the basement. There's blood on the stairs. The caller's voice cracks, a mixture of primal terror and desperation. But the response she gets isn't a siren or a SWAT team. It's a sigh, a weary, bureaucratic sigh. Ma'am, we've been to that address 3 times this week. It's a domestic dispute. If there's no body, there's no crime. Stop calling this line unless someone is actually dead. Silence. Only the sound of wind. What the police didn't know, what they refused to believe, was that while they were lecturing a hysterical woman on the proper use of emergency services, a killer was cleaning his knives just 3 blocks away. This is the story of the girl who cried wolf, only to realize that the wolf was wearing a badge of indifference, and the sheep was already being slaughtered. Welcome to Midnight Crime Vault. Tonight, we descend into the darkness of a case where the truth was screamed from the rooftops, but the only ones listening were the shadows. The setting is Oak Creek, 1994, a town where everyone knows everyone's business, yet no one knows anyone's secrets. It was the kind of place where people left their back doors unlocked, not out of trust, but out of a false sense of security that tragedy only happened on the evening news in big cities. Sarah Jenkins was 22, a nursing student with a bright future and a tragic flaw. She cared too much about her neighbors. She lived in a cramped apartment complex where the walls were thin enough to hear a television through the drywall, but thick enough to stifle the sounds of a struggle. Her neighbor, Marcus Thorne, was a man who lived in the periphery of social circles. He was quiet, worked late shifts at a local warehouse, and kept a garden that was suspiciously well manicured. To the police, he was a non-entity. To Sarah, he was a nightmare unfolding in real time. For weeks, Sarah had heard the muffled thuds and the pleading whispers of a woman she didn't recognize. She had reported it. She had begged the local precinct to check the basement. But Marcus was charming when he needed to be. He told the officers Sarah was obsessed with him, a jilted admirer making up stories. And the police? They believed the man with the steady hand over the girl with the trembling voice. On the night of November 12th, the temperature dropped below freezing. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and damp earth. Sarah sat by her window, watching Marcus's back door. She saw him carry a heavy rolled-up rug to his trunk. It was lumpy, misshapen, and required all of his strength to lift. She called again. He's moving her. He's taking her body away. The dispatcher didn't even dispatch a car. They told her to sleep it off, but Sarah couldn't sleep. She watched the taillights of Marcus's sedan disappear into the fog of the valley. The next morning, Marcus was back, hose in hand, washing out his trunk. The water running into the gutter was a dark rusted red. Sarah took photos. She went to the station. She pleaded with the lead detective, Arthur Miller. Miller looked at the blurry Polaroids and laughed. "Kid, it's deer season. He's a hunter. Go back to school." But Sarah knew. She knew the difference between the copper smell of a hunted animal and the metallic stench of a human life ending in fear. She decided to do what the police wouldn't. She waited for Marcus to leave for work, and she broke into the basement. The air inside was stagnant, smelling of bleach and something sickly sweet. In the corner, she found a single gold earring. It was a small hoop stained with a dark crust. Beside it, etched into the wooden support beam, were 4 faint lines tally marks. She didn't have time to process it, because the heavy door at the top of the stairs creaked open. Marcus hadn't gone to work. He was standing in the silhouette of the doorway, his frame blocking the only light. "I told you to mind your own business, Sarah," he whispered, his voice as smooth as a razor blade. What follows is a descent into a bureaucratic hell where the victim was ignored until her absence became a statistic. The investigation didn't begin with a search warrant. It began with the disappearance, Sarah's disappearance. When she didn't show up for her nursing finals, her parents didn't call the police first. They called Marcus because the police had told them he was the helpful neighbor who looked out for her. Imagine the irony. The predator was tasked with finding the prey he had already consumed. It took 6 more days for Detective Miller to finally walk into that basement. He didn't find Sarah immediately. He found the rug she had described, discarded in a ravine 3 miles away, containing the remains of a woman named Elena Vance, a runaway who had been missing for 3 months. Only then did the weight of his negligence hit him. But where was Sarah? The walls of Marcus's home were stripped bare. The garden Sarah had watched so closely? It wasn't just for flowers. Underneath the meticulously placed hydrangeas and the fresh mulch lay the history of a monster. As the forensic teams began to dig, the town of Oak Creek held its breath. They found the first body at 3 feet, a woman missing since 1991. Then another, and another. The count rose as the community's trust crumbled. The police, who had dismissed Sarah as hysterical, were now forced to admit that her hysteria was actually a highly tuned survival instinct. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. In a hidden crawlspace behind the furnace, they found Sarah. She was alive, but barely. Marcus hadn't killed her yet. He wanted her to watch. He wanted her to see what happens when the world ignores a scream. He had kept her in a soundproofed box, a cruel testament to the silence the police had enforced on her. The trial was a media circus. Marcus Thorne didn't show remorse. He sat in the courtroom with a smug grin, his lawyers arguing that the police negligence was so great that the evidence should be suppressed. The public outcry was deafening. How many women had to die before a woman's word was worth a patrol car's fuel? Even as the judge handed down multiple life sentences, the scars remained. Detective Miller resigned in disgrace, haunted by the deer season comment that had nearly cost Sarah her life and had definitely cost Elena Vance her dignity and death. To this day, the Oak Creek basement remains boarded up, a rotting monument to the dangers of institutional apathy. The questions linger. How many other Sarahs are out there right now calling 911 while an operator rolls their eyes? How many shadows are currently being ignored because they don't fit the profile of a real emergency? The tragedy isn't just that Marcus was a killer. It's that he was allowed to be one by the very people sworn to stop him. The blood on the stairs was real, the screams were real, but the justice was terrifyingly late. The echoes of that basement still haunt the halls of justice in Oak Creek, serving as a reminder that the most dangerous weapon a killer possesses isn't a knife, it's the disbelief of others. Marcus Thorne's garden may be gone, but the seeds of doubt he planted in the system continue to grow. We must ask ourselves, if we heard a scream next door, would we trust the system to answer? Or would we be forced to step into the dark alone, just like Sarah? This case changed the way domestic calls were handled in the state, but laws are only as good as the people who enforce them. As we look back at the evidence, the photos and the chilling 911 tapes, one thing is clear. The most haunting sound in the world is on a scream it. As the silence that follows when no one comes to help. Every time a light flickers in an old apartment complex, or a neighbor is seen carrying something heavy in the middle of the night, the ghost of this case resurfaces. It is a shadow that follows every dispatcher and every patrol officer who thinks they've seen it all, because in the end, the body they finally found wasn't just a victim. It was the remains of a community's innocence. The true crime wasn't just the murders. It was the betrayal of a woman who tried to do the right thing and was treated like a nuisance for it. Sarah Jenkins eventually recovered physically, but she never lived in an apartment again. She moved to a secluded farmhouse, surrounded by cameras and fences, a prisoner of the memory of the man who stood in the doorway. Marcus Thorne remains behind bars, but his story serves as a dark warning. He knew the system's flaws, he counted on them. He used the police's own biases as his shield, and for a long time it worked perfectly. As the credits roll on this dark chapter of true crime history, we are left with a chilling realization. The monster isn't always hiding in the woods. Sometimes he's just the man next door with a well-kept garden and a quiet demeanor. And the hero isn't always the one in uniform. Sometimes it's the person who refuses to stop calling, even when the whole world tells them to shut up. Stay vigilant, stay skeptical, and never let the silence win. This has been Midnight Crime Vault. If this story chilled you to the bone, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have many more secrets to uncover, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Before you go, tell me in the comments, do you think the police should face criminal charges for their negligence in cases like this? Or is the burden of proof simply too high? Let's discuss below. Until next time, keep your eyes on the shadows.